Stranger Things 4 has been a wild ride so far, throwing in some incredible plot twists, as well as giving us a lot to think about for part 2 of the season. Ever since its release, hordes of fans have been flocking to the internet to talk about what's to come in part 2, as well as coming up with and sharing their theories for the season. And I am no exception to this. Throughout the watching of part 1, my mind filled to the brim with questions and theories, and today I'd like to share what I believe to be the most plausible theory for Stranger Things 4. This video will be diving into spoiler territory for Stranger Things 4 Part 1. Please proceed with caution and stop if you do not want to be spoiled. Good day, one and all. This is Synthfox speaking. Now let's get into the counselor theory. The counselor theory is one I began to suspect upon watching episode 3. Turning to the internet to see if anyone else had the same ideas as me, I found dozens of people theorizing precisely what I was thinking. Miss Kelly is one of Vecna's henchmen. It's no secret to viewers that all victims of Vecna, alive or dead, attended Hawkins High, and 3 of those victims have a direct connection to Miss Kelly, the Hawkins High guidance counselor. This is shown within the first episode, where we not only see Max interact with her, but we also learn that Chrissy was going to Miss Kelly as well, as we see her exit Miss Kelly's office upon Max walking up to her door. Later on in episode 3, when Max and the gang are snooping through files in the counseling office, Max finds a folder for Fred Benson and compares his file along with Chrissy's in an attempt to gain insight on Vecna. This gives us complete confirmation that 3 out of 5 of Vecna's victims saw or were seeing Miss Kelly. But what about the other 2? Despite the show not going out of its way to show it, it's not too hard to believe that both Patrick and Nancy also saw her at some point. Patrick is the trickier case, as we don't have much information on him. However, the show heavily implied that he was or is physically abused by his father, both through a brief flashback scene and by a story from Lucas involving Patrick attending practice one day with a black eye. Knowing all of this, as little information as it may be, makes me suspect that he was likely visiting Miss Kelly as well. And then there's Nancy. Ever since season 1, Nancy has been dealing with both trauma and guilt. The trauma of the multiple events over the seasons, and stronger than that, the guilt she feels that it was due to her actions that Barb, her best friend, wound up becoming a victim to the Demogorgon. Given that everyone can't just talk about all the supernatural events that happened to them, I find it pretty unlikely that Nancy would have seen Miss Kelly for her trauma involving the Upside Down and experiences with it. However, I find the idea quite likely that Nancy very well could have had to see her following Barb's death due to grief and guilt. Knowing all of that, I'd say that already there's a decent chance that the theory of Miss Kelly being Vecna's puppet or henchman is a logical one, and one that is more likely to be the truest among all the theories. But what solidified that for me was this. In episode 3, during the scene where Max visits Miss Kelly at her home to attempt to get information on Chrissy, not only does the scene start off with showing us a ticking clock that arguably looks like a small wall edition grandfather clock, but we can also see a very small but curious detail on Miss Kelly herself. And that is the fact that she appears to be wearing a grandfather clock necklace. That's pretty odd choice in jewelry, right? I can't say that I've ever seen anyone wear a necklace like that before. I don't know about you, but all of this screams to me that Miss Kelly is somehow linked to Vecna. I also want to make mention of another theory involving Miss Kelly that I've seen floating around on the internet. And that is the theory that Miss Kelly is actually Kali, also known as 8, in disguise. Now, while this is an interesting theory to hear, I can't say that it sounds like a very logical one. While I do hope that we get to see Kali again before the show ends, I don't see it being too possible that she's Miss Kelly. In season 2 when we meet her, her powers were great, but much like Elle, they were limited. Granted, it has been a couple of years since the time we saw her use her powers, but I find it hard to believe that she would be capable of using her illusion power for 6 to 8 hours a day straight. I will say, though, that this theory is among the more interesting ones that I've heard. What do you think of the counselor theory? Do you think she's working with or a part of Vecna, or is she just caught up in a coincidence? Maybe you have more insight or clues to add to this theory, or perhaps you have another theory about the show. Whatever your thoughts are, do leave them in the comments below. I love to hear from other fans on their thoughts and ideas. Until next time, Synthfox has spoken.